Imagine waking up one morning, newly engaged, and by day's end, find yourself incapable of ever walking again. Confined to a wheelchair, Vianne King knows what it is to be broken, to face shattered dreams. But she has also experienced the forgiveness and power of God. Crowned Miss Wheelchair Canada and Miss Kindness on the world stage, Vianne King tells about the hope that changed her life for the better. Your story begins as a little girl of the age of 5. Tell us about Vianne and Jesus.
For me, I didn't have any theology degree at 5, obviously, but I just knew Jesus in my heart. I just loved him like so much, and that I just wanted to serve him. And I just knew that if I made a mistake, that he would forgive me. And that's what I knew about Jesus, just simple faith that I loved him with all my heart and that I was going to get through anything with him.
Tell us about the influence of a song that you sang following your high school graduation, where Vianne knew that she was called to full-time ministry.
I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be his than have riches untold. Those words, I never really understood the weight of that. The second verse goes, I'd rather have Jesus than man's applause. I would rather be faithful to his dear cause. And you know, those words come back to me over and over and over as I step into the ministry that God has called me into. And he's like, Vianne, you just be obedient to me above the approval of man or anybody's applause. As long as you have your Heavenly Father's approval, that's all you need, because I heard Charles Stanley say, you obey God and you leave the consequences to him. And that song, I believe, was God, again, putting his fingerprints on something that I was going to need later on. And so when that pastor said, there's somebody here that feels a call on their life, I looked around the room to see if there was anyone feeling what I was feeling, like the emotion, and there wasn't. And I thought, I think that's me. I think he's talking to me. I feel that's me. And so I just went to the front and I just like fell on my face before the Lord and just like, and he said, yes. He said, God showed me that you had a call on your life when you sang those words, when you sang that song and those words.
Now, to following the call of God on your life, you, of course, applied to Bible college, got accepted, and then went to Peterborough, Ontario. Now, strangely enough, after graduating Bible college, you chose to stay in Peterborough, but your spiritual life took a downward spiral. What happened?
I ended Bible college not as much passion as what I began. And my experience as a young child, I knew he was real, but I wasn't grounded. Like, how can someone experience God and know him that well, turn her back on God? I didn't understand. I didn't truly understand how to get intimacy. And today I swear, as God is my witness, that there's nothing that's going to come my way that I will turn my back on him ever again.
And then you met the man of your dreams.
I sure did.
Vaughn.
Yes.
And 9 months later, there was a ring?
Yes. Oh, it was such a whirlwind romance with us. Like, I couldn't understand it either. Right? I'm in this I hate men phase, and now like I'm like falling head over heels with this guy in like literally months, right? I'm like, how is this possible? And so yeah, 9 months later, he put a ring on my finger, and I was just like, wow. And his father was a missionary. I was like, wow, maybe there is hope for me to have like that future of being in the ministry and whatever, you know.
This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
So shortly after your engagement, it was a Sunday morning. You were getting ready for church.
Yes, I was excited to show off my ring.
You wanted to go and show off your ring. But before you got to church, something happened that changed the course of your life. Tell us what happened.
I started having some excruciating pain in my upper body, in my chest and my arms, and I just couldn't shake it. And it was so bad that, I was talking to my parents on the phone, and they didn't know what was going on. Actually, by the sound of what was happening, they didn't know if I was having a heart attack. But anyway, they had to call the ambulance. And so Vaughn, while he was coming to get me, he told me this after. I had no idea, because I just blanked that part out. But he said, as I was driving up, he said the ambulance was taking you out of the building, And he said, I could hear you screaming from the front. And I was in an upper loft at the back. And he said, I could hear you screaming from the road when I pulled up. And it was just excruciating. So I get to the hospital, and I'm laying in the hallway, just waiting to be seen, hooked up to morphine for the pain. And I remember just laying there, and as you're turning to get comfortable, you know, like I'm noticing that I'm doing this to turn my arm. I thought, that's weird. But I didn't really think anything of it at the time until I started doing that with my leg. Like, oh, something's wrong here. So I said to the nurse, I said, nurse, I can't feel my legs. And, you know, so immediately they wheeled me into an emerge room where checked my vitals every 15 minutes. Vitals got less and less. And then I'm like, what's going on? I feel like I can't feel my legs. And, you know, no one knew what was going on until it might have been within 6 hours. It was in less than a half a day. I was paralyzed from the chest down, and doctors didn't know even if they were going to lose me at that point.
Mm. Now, with that all taking place, the pressure and the pain of it, what about wedding plans with Vaughn? Did that change?
It was funny because after, it was a week of test and a week of just not sure what's going on, right? And I think it was about a week after that, I'm like, wait a minute, does he still want to marry me? Because, you know, you're caught up in the test, and everybody's running around trying to figure out what's going on. And my biggest question was is he going to still want me now? You know, the doctors are saying I'll never walk again. Will I be a good wife? Will I be able to take care of him? Will I be able to take care of myself? I can't ask him to sign up for that. Mm-hmm. And I said, Vaughn, you know, do you still want to marry me? Because it doesn't look good. Mm-hmm. And he said, Vianne, God gave you to me. I'm not going to give you back and say you're not good enough. We're going to get through this together. Mm. And I just kept focusing on that and our wedding day, and just felt so blessed that, you know, we had this thing together. Mm.
Now, after you and Vaughn then got married, obviously challenges entered the marriage, and as you mentioned, you struggled with not being able to give your best to Vaughn, and as a result, again, with everything that was hitting you, there was the enemy started to feed your mind with lies, and you started to doubt God. You started to have people then doubt Vianne, and you say that you built a wall or a whole life of sin around you. But what happened to that little girl that wanted to do something great for God?
To be quite honest, very first when this all happened, I believed that God was going to heal me, and he was going to raise me up in that hospital bed, and we had a lot of faith-believing people praying. But then when you have people come beside your bedside and say, do you think there's some people that maybe you need to forgive? You know, maybe there's sin in your life. And I'm thinking that's why you're not healed, those kinds of things. I started listening to the voice of man and not the connection that I had as a 5-year-old, that I knew God was real, and I asked my Heavenly Father, and he heard me. But no, I started listening to the lies of all these different theologies that were coming my way, and it started to make me believe that God wasn't a good God, and that maybe he didn't love me. Maybe I do deserve this.
And in your anger, that then drove something between you and Vaughn.
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, I tried to communicate, and because in the midst of that, right, in the midst of all of that is also, I'm now a person with a disability. So do I let my husband get me the door because I want to be treated like a lady, or do I show my independence and how independent I can be as a person with a disability? So this is right, I wanted to be treated like a lady. There were things even early on that I compromised on, as far as, well, you read my book, you know that I was paralyzed from the chest down. I felt like I was kissing my brother. I didn't have that chemistry with him anymore. So, you know, for 3 years, I pretended that we're hitting the moon, right? Time after time, 3 years. What is that doing inside of me? I'm not allowing my husband to understand the depths of the pain I'm in, because every time I try to communicate my pain, he feels like he's not doing something right. And so it was just a back and forth thing, right? And so when you start taking things on that aren't you're not meant to carry, and you start believing these things about yourself, or you start holding things in, trying to be strong in some way, the enemy will use that, and he'll start to plant these lies. Maybe you're not good enough, and this and that, and then you're starting to pull away from anybody who cares about you, the church, and you know, your family, starting to lie. My mom and dad, you know, like, oh, are we in church today? I finally, well, I would start to lie, because I just didn't want to have the conversation, until finally I was done with just pretending.
Right.
I told my husband, he was devastated. Like, why after all these years would you just tell me now that, anyway, so all of these things were just snowballing. And there's a quote by, I think Kay Arthur said, she's like, you know, sin takes you further than you ever expect to go, keep you longer than you ever expected to stay, and cost you more than you ever expected to pay. That is so true. You know what? Satan never gets you with saying, oh, you know, Van, go out and, you know, steal, or go out and have an affair. Like, no, it doesn't happen that way. It's those little things that if he can get you to compromise on early, then he's got you treading down that road that you didn't expect to go, and keep you longer. And
you compromised.
I was hurting. I was hurting, and I needed someone to care about me. And so I allowed those things to come in, and then next thing you know, I'm starting to build this life of like online dating kind of thing, you know, whatever that looked like, and then just turn to another man for comfort, and that, and then finally it was just like, I don't care about Vaughn anymore. And in the midst of that, we actually tried to connect, Vaughn and I, and so we decided that we would try to have a baby. And so I was like, okay, maybe we'll try. And it was 2 months of being pregnant. I was in the bathroom and I was bleeding profusely, and I knew it wasn't a good sign. I get to the hospital, and we're sitting there for hours. And he's wondering if he's going to miss his flight, wondering if I should take a taxi home. And all the while I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on, but it's not good. And you're just concerned about whether or not you're going to miss your flight. I want you here, but I couldn't tell him. I didn't want him to resent me. I wanted him to want to be there. And so we get home from the hospital after miscarrying twins, actually, that it was like 3 something, and we got home from the hospital at 3:20. He was out the door, and I was like, I'm done. And he was on a business trip for a couple of weeks, and when he came back, I'm like, it's over. Why am I hanging on to something? Like, I can't be myself, and I don't love you anymore, and I'm seeing somebody else. And he's like, he hung on to me. He still hung on to me after all that. That's the grace of God. And so none of that made sense to me. Some people ask me, like, would you change anything? Would you, like, do you get mad at God, or, you know, all those things? And yeah, I have gotten mad at God, and I don't even know if I can say I regret or I want to go back and change anything, because I look at everything that's happened, and yeah, we make bad choices in our pain, and that's on me. But the redemption that God brings as a result of when we just hear God take my pain has been something that I've experienced. That's why I can say that no matter what comes my way, I know that God is real, and that I will never doubt you again, because I've experienced a grace in my life that I do not deserve. None of us deserve.
If you've been watching this program and need someone to pray with, please call one of our prayer partners now.
You talk about the grace of God. God restored your marriage, and you and
Yes.
Vaughn today are just living incredible lives together.
Yes.
But I want you to tell us about a dream that you had, which following the next morning, I believe it was a Sunday, you went to church with Vaughn, and you were going because you wanted to end this cycle of pain and sin, and what you hadn't experienced for so long, God met you that morning. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, actually for probably about 6 years, I started like to not believe that God was even cared about me. But I remember I had a dream one night, and I dreamt that I had turned away from God, like I'd messed up so bad that there was no hope for me, and that I was not going to make it to heaven. And I even tried to say his name in my dream, and like I was mute. I couldn't say anything. And I just started to cry. I'm like, I'm sorry, God, I'm sorry. Like, please, like, don't let it be the end, right? Like, I wanted to love God, but I in my dream, I had missed it. I woke up from that dream, and like after years of not being able to cry because the enemy would like, oh, what's the point of your tears? I started to weep before the Lord and say, is there hope for me? Like, truly, is there any hope? But the enemy was like, what's the good of your tears? Look where that got you before. And so like when you're like, I was like crying, like sobbing, ugly tears cry. So God started flooding me with the emotion. He started reminding me of that little girl who sang, I'd rather have Jesus. The emotion today that I feel is not because I carry the pain of that, it's because I see the redemption that he's got me here today, right? And so something rose up inside me, and God started reminding me of that little girl who got called when she sang, or the love that Vaughn had for me and how he stayed and he hung on to me. Like, those are the things that God flooded me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that real emotion of who God was. And so I went and I prayed, and I was like, God, like, you know, I don't care about like a healing. I don't care about all that stuff. Like, please, like, if you're going to do anything for me, just grip my heart. Like, may I never doubt you again. And so I went to church. I didn't tell Vaughn about any of this. I just felt like I was getting ready to meet God. And I'm sitting there in service, and I didn't recognize any of the songs. Like, and so me, I'm a big worshiper, and songs like really affect me. And like, so I was like, God, I don't know any songs. How can I relate to you? And I need to. And then like in the midst of all these songs I didn't know, there was a song, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longeth after thee. The tears started flowing. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. And I was just like, wow, thank you so much for meeting me here. And it was from that moment on that I'm like, okay, God, thank you. Yeah.
A friend of yours and you were in Walmart, and she asked you this question, which I find is really interesting. She says, Vianne, if God asked you if you wanted to walk, how would you answer him? And your reply was, I'd ask what he wanted. To me, that's a strange answer, but explain what you were meaning.
Because that question actually threw me off, because I'm like, what would I say? But the reason why I said what I said was because I was so afraid to want anything that he wouldn't want. I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want to hope for something that wasn't his will. So I didn't want to walk if it's not something that he would want. So I'm like, I would ask him, yeah, God, is this something that you would want for me? And that's exactly what I meant by that, because I didn't want my heart to grow cold anymore by seeking after things that just would leave me empty. And I meant that prayer about, God, grip my heart, because I never want to doubt you again. So when that question was posed to me, yeah, I was like, God, what would you want?
In a blog you wrote, God created me this way. I will never say again, why me? I want you to explain that briefly, but tell us, what's the disability today that you're struggling with?
The disability I have is transverse myelitis, and it's a neurological virus that attacked the spinal cord where all the nerve endings are. And basically, they forget what they're supposed to do. So all of everything that's connected on your insides, like, you know, your ability to walk and function, just basically disappeared. And so that's the virus that is transverse myelitis.
So now, in saying that to God, why would you never say again, why me?
This might sound really bizarre, but I thank God for this journey. Because without it, I would not have the intimacy with him that I have today. I don't want to sound cliche or sound like, oh, you don't know what I'm going through. No, I don't. But I almost lost my marriage. I was unfaithful, and like I doubted God. And like, but he rescued me. And like, if I can go through all of that, and God can give me a platform to share his glory, because that was the little redhead that said, God, I just want to do big things for you. He didn't do this to me, but he allowed me to use this for his glory, right? And so, yeah, I will never say, why me? So sometimes when people look at me, they go, oh, you know, I'm so sorry. And I say in those settings, like, so just in case there's anybody in the room that feels sorry for me, I have to confess, I feel sorry for you. because I have like this unfair advantage in life, I've been rock climbing, downhill skiing, and all these things that it's like, wow, right? But do you get, wow, oh, you drive? Oh my goodness, wow, you do your own groceries? Like, I get accolades for things that, do you get praise for doing your own groceries, Robert?
Definitely not.
I'm being funny, but at the same time, I'm being oh so real. That when you have something that comes your way that is so out of your control, the one thing that you do have control over is how you harness that to shine the light on him. And like, that is priceless. That's why I will never say, why me again?
Vianne, one final question. And people may not believe this, but you say today you have so much joy and happiness. How so?
Not of works, lest any man should boast. I didn't win the lottery. I didn't do anything. I just said yes to God. I gave him my obedience and my surrender. I gave him my pride. I gave him my all my pain. I just God, if you can take this broken vessel and use it, then here. And that's how I can have this joy. And he did. He replaced all that because once you let go of the hurt and the pain, it doesn't make the hurt and pain okay. It's awful that it happened, but he will always replace it with more. And I'm so living in an abundant life right now. And I want people to know that they can live abundant living as well.
If you've been watching this program and need someone to pray with, please call one of our prayer partners now at 1-866-273-4444